it once you go live.
I've got it in the group as well.
Sounds good.
This is the voice of the New York Football Giants, Bob Papa, and you are listening to the best throughout Europe, the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. As always, proudly in association with Annie's Man Club. As remember, it is okay to talk, and tonight we are 75% British. We're 25% American. We're still 100% Giants. We are back. It's 1 week from opening night of the 2026 draft in Pittsburgh, kicking off round one next Thursday night. In a week where we've had the ongoing Dexter Lawrence situation, we've decided to change it up for tonight. We'll bring you the boys' top 5 quarterbacks and tight ends next week. But tonight we are focusing on Dex and the fallout from Joe Schoen's press pre-draft presser from yesterday. Joining me to go through all this, we've got Aaron, we've got Chris off the subs bench, and all the way from across the pond, we've got a long-time friend of the show, Monty from the He's a Giant podcast. Guys, how are we doing?
Very well. Exciting show. Changing last minute. Obviously, quarterbacks and tight ends, we're not interested in any of them as Giants fans. So let's talk about the really interesting stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Chris, how you doing, man?
Thank you guys for having me on. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, good. Excited. It's I can't believe draft week's come around so quick. And it's all the way in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So the Yinzers are going to be out. It's going to be a great sort of time. I'm looking forward to it. Excited over the next week.
Monty, good to have you back on, man. How you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. It's good to be back. A pleasure as always. And yeah, I was talking to you guys before the show. It snuck up on me a little bit here. I can't believe that we're already here. I got to finalize I'm through like my top 60. I got to get my top 100, sorted out. But I'm excited, man. It's all of it is coming to a head in a week, and unfortunately, we'll talk about it, some other drama going on when we should be focusing on the draft.
That's the thing, man. We should be focusing fully on draft prep right now, but yeah, there's a big story in the news that we broke last week. Obviously, so we broke last week. We sort of covered last week, but there's been a lot going on in the last 24 hours, really, even the last hour as well. But we'll get onto that in a second. If you're watching live on YouTube or X, get involved in the comments. As some of you have been already. Send us your questions. Let us know your opinions as well on the Dex situation. And don't forget to like the episode, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already. And for audio listeners, Aaron, how many stars do they need to leave us?
5 stars.
A 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice would be fantastic. And you can also now buy us a coffee or a beer or a soft drink or whichever you want. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/Big Blue UK Ireland. The QR code is on the screen in the top right-hand corner for those watching live. Or those watching on playback as well. You can also find the link in the description. Big thank you to Holty and to Kieran for your donations. They're very well received. I will enjoy a beer on both of you. Keep them coming in. There is only one place to start, really. That is the Dexter Lawrence situation, which seems to be ongoing. Not even an hour ago, it broke on X that Paul Schwartz, with his New York Post story, saying basically Dex's time with the Giants is over. He will not suit up for the Giants again if he has his wish, and he basically wants out. It's also come from other sources as well. Ryan Dunleavy said the same thing as well. It's a pretty big development over the last hour, considering pre sort of 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever time it is. We were going by what Joe Schoen had said in his presser and said, it looked like it was sort of progressing quite nicely. but there were various different sources saying that it could not necessarily be that way. But with this news coming out in the last hour or so that he is looking to leave and his time with the team is over, it's kind of taken everyone a bit by surprise, really. Aaron, what do you make of it? What do you make of the latest that's come out in the last hour or so?
Yeah, so obviously, I'm fully on the we're just going to keep him and he's going to be ours and just pay the man. Then obviously with the developments, it's it was maybe there is something to this, maybe this thing, and it's just he's exploring his market and this, that, and the other. But yeah, now that this is obviously we'll talk about the press conference, but the opening line of the press conference from Joe Schoen was, "Hey, this is we're making progress. Can't put a time on it, but did say, oh well, maybe there's a possibility of trading." He's picking up the phone, but he'd always pick up the phone and listen. It doesn't mean that he's going to do anything with it. But now, obviously, the statement is over. Paul Schwartz, the source, feels like this news could be coming from the Giants, and they're just trying to enhance the market to see either A, what is the real value that Dex is out there, because if there's not many people biting, then maybe Dex isn't worth what he thinks he's worth, and that's how you can use it as a negotiation strategy. Or is this actually, yeah, we are done with the guy, and if he's not going to come to the negotiating table, we've got no option but to move on from him.
Yeah, it kind of reads, obviously, at the moment that it looks like the Giants are going to potentially move on from him. Obviously, Ryan Dunleavy said about the $28 million solution being off the board. Monty, what's your thoughts on the latest developments?
It's disappointing. I'm still in the denial stage personally. I'm just hoping that I feel like there's enough where the Giants feel like they're in like the driver's seat on this, and they might be able to hold out and see if they can get some sort of advantage, which I don't think is necessarily the right way to handle this. I don't understand why they're creating this situation where their best player doesn't want to be on this football team anymore, when all you got to do is pay them, reward your best players. It's it's something that it looks so bad on this organization that every other player is looking, and it's like, it doesn't matter how good you are, we never pay these guys what they deserve. It's even we paid Andrew Thomas Dexter the first time. Even then, like, it's not like we kind of got them at a little bit of a discount, which I mean was nice and all, but when it's time to pay these guys at the top of the market, you just got to do it, man. I don't know. I'm disappointed that we've gotten to this point.
Yeah, and I think the fact that we have got to this point, it's like you said, it says a lot about the organization. Chris, like, without Dex on this team, what does the roster look like? What does the defense look like? Is it obviously infinitely is going to be worse off, right?
I mean, what does Harbour do? He's come from Baltimore, where the defensive line was his identity. So losing Lawrence before the first season is obviously a gut punch to that vision. The £28 million figure is huge. That was apparently the number on the table as potential resolution. I think with Lawrence walking away from that suggests he's either got a specific destination in mind, or the camp is confident they'll get a better trade for him. But it leaves a massive hole. And Brian Burns said today that the Giants ain't the same without 97. So that quote lands very differently now. And again, the trade return is the next question. Who gets him, and what do the Giants get back?
Yeah, I mean, obviously in this press conference, Shane said about the fact that he's under contract for 2 more years and there's no need to trade him. But obviously he's not guaranteed any money. So if he misses any time on the field this season with injury, then it's not good for him. So that's why he's kind of wanting us to be signed. And I've said all along, just pay the man. Just give him the money he deserves. At the end of the day, he's along with Chris Jones, he's the best. Them two between them, they're by far and above the elite defensive tackles in this league. And I just don't understand like the logic and the thinking behind. Let's drag this out. Let's try just get the agent come in. How much does he want? Okay, he wants this much. Just pay him. Just pay him. Like, you know, we could potentially do without a free agent that we've picked up if we have Dexter Lawrence on this team. You know, this should have been one of the first things we tried to get done this offseason is extend his contract. And why are we now a week out from the draft and not getting it done? Why are we even entertaining trade offers for him? Why do we not want to keep the best players on our roster? And it almost makes you question, you know, does Joe Schoen not value this position like he didn't value the position of running back a couple of years ago? You know, it's almost like he doesn't want to pay like above and beyond. He wants to try and keep money sort of here and sort of push it elsewhere and move it around. Just pay the man his money because he fucking deserves it. It's pissing me off. Just pisses me off.
10 for hat time. There is a certain individual in Giants in the negotiating position whose position might not be that safe, and he could be gone as soon as 10 days' time after the draft is over. Is this possibly a negotiating tactic from Dexter Lawrence agent to say, well, actually, we'll have a different negotiator in 10 days' time once the draft is over and Joe Schoen has no more reason to go in there. So, this could be the last push. Again, if the stories come from Giants ownership, we know Joe Schoen's close to the Giants ownership. They're using the deal to get the information out there to really put the pressure on Dex to come to the table and sign something. But maybe they're just thinking 10 days time we'll have a different. It'll be Dawn Aponte, the sole negotiator in this position with John Harbaugh, and that's it. So we can't rule that out.
No, we can't. We can't rule that out. But again, like if you're gonna make that play, if you're gonna make that move, then I'd much rather than done it at the beginning of the offseason and got a new GM in and get him up to speed and let him have at it in the draft. You know, why are we playing this stupid fucking games?
But again,
baffles me.
If you've got a guy running a draft coming in late, want him to deal with all of the scouts and everything else to get you through the draft. I do get it going, well, if I replace the GM now, lose some of the scouting staff, we're compromised going into the draft. Right? We haven't got loads of picks. We've got to be quite clever with who we take. So I can see why you keep him on. But yeah, what you don't want to do is have a situation that wrecks the roster as well. And if losing Joe Schoen to keep Dexter Lawrence, I know which one I'm picking.
Yeah.
Right? If it's a straight fight between these two, I know which one I'm picking.
Yeah. It should have never gotten to this point, man. Like I understand negotiating, trying to get the best deal for your team, but it should have never got to the point that Dexter Lawrence doesn't want to be on this team. And we can blame Joe Schoen, and I'm sure there's some blame to be had there, and we'll see what happens if we do move on from him. But Dexter Lawrence isn't going anywhere until John Harbaugh signs off on it. So I mean, this is an organizational failure if we move on from this guy.
100%. And the fact is, Shane paid fucking Daniel Jones $40 million APY 3 years ago, whenever it was, and we can't pay the best defensive tackle in this league the money he deserves. Come on, give me a break.
I know, and it just goes to show that if this does happen, it's putting us in a position. We're already thin at that position already.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? So, the likely return maybe a late round first pick or a second rounder, which creates a real problem because the next in line behind Dexter Lawrence is Roy Robertson Harris and a second-year lineman in Darius Alexander. So, what are we going to do to fill those kind of gaps? We're starting with a new head coach. We lost a lot of football games last year, and we want those stepping stones back. We want to be able to go off on the front foot, and losing someone like Dexter Lawrence is going to be a massive impact for the Giants.
And that's clear, right? So even Nacho was the second guy last year. He's gone, right? when Dexter Lawrence wasn't on the field, this run defense went from poor to the worst.
Mhm.
Right? It's not just
everything
like it went
did.
from good to bad. It went from poor to the worst. So we obviously DJ Reader came in earlier in the week on a workout, was a high priority target for me at free agency. That's the sort of guy I thought would have come in to be our backup. But now we're looking at him, having to bring him in as a bridge replacement, because without that level of guy on that line, even if we draft one high, there's no one going at 5 that's worth the pick at 5. So we're looking at who's available at 37 or whatever we get in compensation for Dexter Lawrence to go straight back in as a defensive tackle. And does that feel right? Like getting one first round pick for Dex, if there's even available, just to replace him with a rookie defensive tackle? That's not an upgrade.
Because realistically, who's gonna make the trade, and then who's gonna pay him? You know, it's a twofold thing. It's a huge amount to ask. You know, at least if we extend this contract and then a year, 2 years down the line we look at making that trade, at least it's kind of, they know what they're getting themselves in for, and also the cap is obviously increasing every single year, right? So at least it would be a better situation for teams at that point. But to trade him now and then for them have to then extend his contract now as well, like I said with the situation with Burns last year, it's a case of like we traded for him and then we had to pay him, and that's why we only had to give up a second round pick for him. So it's almost a case of our team's going to want to give up a first for him.
Yeah, and I think you probably can get a first, but it's gonna be like a late first, and it's like you're not, and he should be more than that. Like if you're moving on from a guy like him, you know, I understand the argument where people are coming from, where he had a down year last year, and you know they're worried about what he is moving forward. I understand there's some fear there, but I also think people don't understand how good he was, even though he was worse than his standard. Like, you know, as you guys talked about how good we were in the run game. With him on the field, we weren't that good, but the difference between him on and off the field, I mean, who is it? Warren Sharp put out stats to this. And last year, the year that everyone said was so bad, the Giants were 8th in yards per attempt with him on the field and 32nd in yards per attempt with him off the field. I mean, there is a big difference. You can point to the half sack that he had and all that, but you know, the reality is, you know, credit to Brian Burns, who had a fantastic season. He translated 66% of his pressures into sacks. That's such an unrealistic, unsustainable amount of sacks. And, you know, credit to Burns for, you know, getting those plays and cleaning up and get that. But you can directly correlate that to, we were top 10 in sacks. We probably will still be top 10 in sacks. Well, if we keep Dexter Lawrence at least, but that's going to come differently. It's going to be Abdul Carter, who only got 4 sacks, is going to get more of his share. Dexter Lawrence, who only had a half sack, is going to get more of his share. You know, the pressure is going to come the same. It's just who's getting credit for it. And that was a strong part of our game. And yes, he definitely had a down year. He wasn't, you know, before it was like one all the way down here, the next nose tackle as far as impact as a nose. And I think there's things you could point to for that. I do think his elbow was still bothering him last year. I think that's pretty clear that, you know, he came out of that game in week 12 and was on the injury report week 13 for the same elbow he had surgery on. He added that elbow brace to the season. And I'm sure there's other aspects. I do think there's probably motivational issue. He was clearly annoyed about his contract that, you know, he tried getting an extension last year and get it. But to me, you can dislike Dexter Lawrence for that all you want. You can call him a diva, whatever you want. I don't care. If Dexter Lawrence, if the difference between 2024 Dexter Lawrence and 2025 Dexter Lawrence is just paying the man, then just fucking pay the man, and you call him a diva or whatever all you want. I don't care. Just get me my good football players on my team.
Yeah, you can, and the thing is, you can call him whatever you want because he's Dexter fucking Lawrence, and he's a fucking man.
Look,
you know what I mean?
There's maybe he is a diva. Sometimes really great players are divas. That's, if you're never gonna have a diva on your team, then you're probably not gonna have a lot of good players on your team. That's just the reality of the NFL.
Yeah, and let's face it, like, as well, he's a defensive captain. The whole of the defense want him back on this team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not one of them's going to turn around and be like, "Nah, we don't." You know, Dex can go. They want him back. Of course, they want him back. He's the leader of this defense.
He makes all their lives easier. all of their lives are made easier by
100%.
him. He's commanded double teams at the highest rate in the NFL over the last 3 years. Even last year, again, in the down year, he was second in double team rate in the NFL.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's going to change
We
the culture. It's good, the culture as well. Like if you think about him in the locker room, like he's such a big presence, obviously with his size as well. But like you know, even when he's smack talking on the field and stuff like that, he just annoys the hell out of oppositions. And having him removed from that locker room and the culture, it'll have a significant impact going. You know, before we've even snapped the ball, you know, come September. You know, we need to find. We just pay him. Just like, please, for fuck's sake, just someone in that Giants building pay him. And you can imagine that. You know, you can imagine that some of the higher hierarchy in there. It could be another situation where it's they're losing sleep the same way that when we lost Saquon Barkley. Do you know what I mean? So it's like they need to find a way to sort this out and get him back in that building and iron everything out.
Like, can you like obviously when the whole Barkley situation was going on, we heard what John Mara said in obviously on the Hard Knocks. Imagine what he's saying to this situation now. It's like we've lost the face of our franchise 2 years ago. Now we're going to potentially lose one of the faces of our franchise. This, like, what the fuck is going on, Joe? Sort it out.
Over what? Like, you're looking in this article and it's like, yeah, it might be more than money, but we can't tell you any reason it would be other than money. So it's money. You're telling me that this whole thing is over money. That's what we're getting to, where we are alienating our best football player to the point that he doesn't want to be on this football team anymore because we won't just pay him a few more $1 million.
Yep.
Well, and that's exactly it, right? So they're saying that the $28 million deal is off the table. Well, who said 28 million was the number? That's not market setting. That's still 3 million short, right? So if I was Dex, I'd be like, yeah, okay, take the 28 million off because it's not enough. It's supposed to be its market setting, right? And you know what are we going to do with that extra few million? You know, keep around overpay a kicker again or something?
Sign Odell Beckham to a 1 year contract.
Don't even talk about that. There must be something within. There must be some sort of conversations that John Harbaugh and Joe Schoen are having. Like, is it an operation?
There has to be.
The operation operating independently? I don't know. Like, what isn't unifying where they can't get to a decision to give the man his money? Like, I don't know.
I would love to know John Harbaugh's thoughts on this right now, because obviously he's the sort of the GM sort of head coach, isn't he? He's that guy that is taken, essentially kind of demoted Joe Schoen a little bit in terms of like, okay, you deal with this, I'll deal with everything. He is that sort of true like manager of the team, sort of. So I'd love to know his thoughts on this right now, because he's probably. I'd be very, very surprised if he's happy with what's going on right now. I'd be very surprised if he's happy with what's going on right now. You know, obviously, we all hope that 97 signs an extension and stays with the team. That goes without saying, but yeah, it's kind of like you said, Monty. It's almost like I'm still in denial a little bit. I don't want to accept that this is actually happening. I think the last time I felt this strongly about anything in terms of, you know, potentially not having players on a roster next season is, you know, when like the whole Eli era came to an end, it was almost like I didn't want to accept that was happening. You know, Barkley, that sucks, but whatever, you know. But this one I think this one would really hurt. And if it was just over a few $1 million, then it would really suck.
I think if we can make it to Friday without Dexter Lawrence not being on this team, I think there is a much higher chance that we work this thing out, because, you know, we're going to get back to the table. He's going to lose money if he's not coming again. The reality is the Giants are in the driver's seat here. I don't know why they're using their leverage so much to the point that they're alienating their best player, but they are in the driver's seat. And if we get past the draft, there's not going to be as much incentive to move on from them. Those picks aren't going to come until next year. And, if you do think he's a great player, you'd rather get him on the field and either he's helping his trade value, or maybe he's proving to you, even though I think he should have proven it to you at this point, but proving you that he is deserving that deal. I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go forward, but I think this next week is going to be very interesting, this whole conversation.
So what you're saying is you don't think we would do a Jerry Jones and wait to training camp and trade your best player away for future picks at that point?
Who knows? But no, I hope not.
Don't say that, Aaron. Come on, bro.
Surely Joe Schoen is better than Jerry Jones, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know.
You fucking hope so. You'd hope so. Jesus.
Hopefully it does come to that. We get 2 first-round picks like Dallas did.
Exactly. Boom.
I mean, that would be a save. That would be a sort of silver lining, wouldn't it? If that happened, 2 first-round picks. Okay, we'll take that, no problem. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously all over socials at the moment, and everybody's having their opinion, everyone's having their say on it. And
hot.
yeah, it sucks, but at the same time, there is still time. It's not one of those things that's it's a done deal, and he's not going to be on the team. There is still time, like you said, Monty, as well. That the organisation has the upper hand right now, and you just hope that they see sense and pay him the money once, and they reset that market for defensive tackle. Because I think if anyone deserves it, he does, right? So, it's going to be an ever-developing situation between now and draft night next week, and probably maybe even further past that as well. But it's just one of those things.
We could do without it before draft week, though, right, Dan? We could do without all this sort of It's the old sort of situation again with the Giants. We're constantly in the news. We're constantly in the forefront of the likes of social media, where we're in the headlights again, and we could do without this before draft week. Hopefully, like Monty says, we come to a decision where we can get this sorted out. But there has to be, whoever is in charge, they need to sort this out pretty quickly, because it's going to leave a bitter taste next week if something does happen and we're heading into draft week.
Yeah, massively. Aaron, you going to say something? Look like you're about to say something.
No. I just really, going back to Joe Schoen's press conference, and obviously, you go into the draft with a completely different attitude. He was mentioning how we take best player available at 5 and all these kind of things. But when you've got a big hole in the roster, which arguably we've already got at right guard and corner and these kind of things, but when you've got a real big hole in the roster, as bad as it without Dex would be, a Dexter-sized hole in the roster would be a disaster, right? So that changes completely what you're doing, and there, if you don't take a defensive tackle at 5, you get to 37, and everyone knows you're taking a defensive tackle, so everyone knows who they need to jump if they want one.
Yeah. And I think the fact that Schoen, he opened his press conference commenting about the whole Dex situation before he took any questions. He knows that it's the big talking point right now. And like you said, he seemed quite positive about it and said like negotiations were going well. So, is that smoke screen? Is that or are negotiations actually going well? And what's being reported is a load of bollocks. Who knows? But yeah, we'll move on to the press conference that Joe Schoen had yesterday. His annual pre-draft presser. He spoke for about 20 minutes to the media, and I thought it was quite revealing as well. Like he sort of the whole thing about obviously what Coach Harbaugh said about everyone being tradable. He kind of put that to bed quite quickly and said like, no, not necessarily everybody's tradable. And he was questioned about running backs as well. He played sort of both sides of that. He hyped up the current running back room, obviously with Scatterboo and Tyron Tracy, which sounded like a reason to not take one at 5. Obviously with Jeremiah Love But then he then left the door open to and sort of didn't avoid ruling it out. I think I felt less like a hint, more like a smokescreen. But and he clearly said like their draft tactics are BPA. Some teams already had with interest in teams. Some teams already had interest in the number 5 pick, and nothing would be decided before draft night, and once we're on the clock as well. And it's good to sort of see his thinking and where the team are thinking. The scouts were in for 14 days. They've been finally given a day off, and so it's all it is. Like I said, we're a week away, and it's all sort of coming together fairly nicely, apart from the whole deck situation. Let's sort of put that aside and think about the draft and sort of and what he said in his presser. Like, Aaron, what's your biggest takeaways from his press conference?
Yeah, so I think it was actually I think the real interesting thing was when he was talking about Dorna Ponte's job in the room. Obviously, the deck's the news, right? But outside of that, that Dorna Ponte would be working the trade value and kind of talking it through on the clock. So she's got a clear role in kind of saying, well, is this deal on the phone better value than what the player that we want to take at this pick? And he said, that kind of peeled the onion back a little bit of what it's like in that draft room when you're on the clock. He said it's much easier to do it in the first round, although there's a few less minutes in the first round this year. But when you're going to sort of day 2, day 3, when you're on the clock, that clock's counting down awfully quick when you're trying to make a decision whether to take the deal or to move on. And obviously part of that is who's going to be available in the pick you trade down to. So, I think the first round you can do, especially when you're picking at 5, doesn't take many mock draft sims. I do one every week at the moment and can kind of see who's going to be available. And actually, if I move down to 12 or 15, there's a big drop off compared to say 9 or 10. And actually, you can kind of go, well, if I'm going to move past 10, I want a first rounder next year, and I want and I want a second rounder this year. That kind of thing. So you can kind of play those scenarios out. When you get to the 4th, 5th round, you've got to be quick on those decisions because you haven't done the scenarios. The guys on the board, who expected Scatterby to be available where we got him last year, So yeah, it can go crazy. So it was nice just to see that little bit, as much as we think about the way they do it. Just anytime I get to see behind the scenes what it's like, I'd like to be a fly on the wall in the draft room on draft day. We all lap up the little when all these teams now put out clips of them on the phone and going down to the pick and. What was it last year that Dave all said to Joe, "Good job, Joey," when he got Jackson Dart with the trade. So yeah, just that's the bit that I the real nut in me that wants to see more of.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I said I thought it was quite a good press conference overall in terms of what he did say, and then the whole thing around the running back situation, like what didn't give a straight answer either way. Like it was almost like, no, we're not in the market, but yes, we are in the market, and it's almost like just that little bit of a tease. But the whole Dorna Ponte thing as well, working the phones and calculating the values, like I think again that'll be really cool. Maybe that'll leave him to do what he needs to do and focus on what he needs to focus on. But Chris, your thoughts on this press conference? Like, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the presser looks a lot different now in hindsight to what's happened with the current news. I think that I think for me that when he went out of his way to stress how collaborative his relationship is with John Harbour, which would seem deliberate, like sort of a deliberate reassurance, given how different it is to the Dable dynamic. But is he under pressure to show how Harbour is actually in charge? I think that he confirmed. Another thing for me was that he confirmed at the call talks on pick 5. I'm always going to pick up the phone. is what he said. That is my job as general manager. So I think his strongest hint yet that a trade down is generally on the table, which is something that, and I know Monty, I've heard you guys talking about it on your podcast, is that I would look to probably trade out of that spot to get more picks. So I was quite intrigued to hear that from him. I think that we can pick up some good draft capital. I don't want to trade, and I've always said this is just my personal opinion, I don't want to be trading with someone in our division, but it might be interesting caveat or a pivot that the Cowboys are wanting to move up. Could there be an instance where we're picking up the phone to Jerry Jones? I'm not sure. In terms of the running back situation, what he was talking about, I think he said the running back room is fine. I kind of agree with that. He pushed back hard on the idea of drafting Jeremiah Love, who is a phenomenal, and I mean phenomenal running back. But I think that because we've got Scarborough and Tracy, that feels more significant now. So I think that we probably won't go for a running back at our pick, if I'm going to be honest. But that's not saying that he isn't out of this world. So they're really my points on what I thought were the big takeaways. Obviously, the Lawrence thing is now, taking its own shape. So we'll see how it is over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and if Jeremiah Love is there at 5 and we do go BPA, surely that means he's coming to New York, right? Like, why if we genuinely are going best player available, why are you going to turn him down at 5? Like, would you turn him down at 5 if he's there, Monty?
I'm actually not as high in Jeremiah Love as some other people. I am the exception to not the rule. Most, almost a lot of people a lot smarter than me are very high on Jeremiah Love. To me, I think he's a very good player. To me, I don't see him in the tier of the Saquon Barkley's, the Bijan Robinson, even the Ashton Genty. To me, I thought Ashton Genty was a superior prospect. To me, he's in, which is still very good tier, the Travis Etienne's, the Breece Halls, the Najee Harris, who obviously didn't work, but the Josh Jacobs of the world. That's more where I see him. Okay. I think he's a very good player, but I am, to me, a guy like Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles would be my clear BPA option there.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think, if Sonny Styles is still there at 5, I think tied in with our needs as well, I think you have to go with him rather than Jeremiah Love. And also, like he said about in the presser as well, he said about looking ahead to when it comes to their new contract as well, as like looking at how much APY like each position could potentially earn and things like that. And it's like, thinking long term in the future, like is Love likely to still be around like 4 or 5 years from now, or is we all know the likelihood of a running back suffering a serious injury. I mean, look at David Wilson a few years back. Obviously, he looked electric when he came out, and
the other point, how valuable, forget positional value and this contract value stuff, how valuable is a top 10 running back to a team that wants to win a Super Bowl? Who was the last top 10 running back taken that won a Super Bowl with their original team? Let's ignore Saquon Barkley. With their original team, which team? Who was that?
Yeah,
anyone want to take a guess?
Probably back when it was much more of the meta to take probably something in the early 2000s.
So Reggie Bush, which maybe not the guy you think of, but Reggie Bush in 2006 draft, obviously won the 2010 Super Bowl with the Saints. But yeah, Reggie Bush is the last time a top 10 running back went on to think. And think how many running backs we've seen be critical to a team winning a Super Bowl, and obviously they're not high round picks. So it goes down to that thing. It's not just positional value. Part of the reason you don't pay running backs so much, but you can find day 2, day 3 running backs that can contribute as well as one of the superstar running backs. Yeah, okay, your Christian McCaffreys, your Saquon Barkley's, they may get their best season into that MVP conversation. But it doesn't often lead to Super Bowls.
No, you look at the backs we've had on the roster when we won the last 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
You know, 4th, 5th round picks, right?
And I'll say make an argument for our guy, the guy that's on, you know, behind Aaron right now, and Cam Scadaboo. I think people are writing off like what he could bring a little bit too quickly. And, you know, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but everything I'm hearing is saying that as bad as that injury looked, it's something that he should come back pretty quickly from into 100%. Not that like speed was necessarily his game to begin with. No. You know, I think the question about, I was a big Cam Scadaboo fan coming out. He was a guy I hit on. I've been pretty good at the running backs I've hit on. I was high on Cam Scadaboo. I had Ashton Jensen as RB1 a year out. I hit Bucky Irving was my RB1 the year before. It's been a position I've been pretty successful at. And I was very, very high on Cam Scadaboo. And to me, there was an over obsession with the athleticism of these guys, and his game won't translate. And to me, once he answered that bell in the game, and clearly his game did translate to the NFL, to me, the sky's the limit with this guy. That was the question. Would it translate? It did. And, you know, if the guy played a full season, and, you know, we'll see if his play style stands up in the NFL, but I don't think him getting a freak injury is in any indication of it not holding up. If anything, I'd point more to like his training camp injury is more of an indication than that. But I would say that, I mean, you look at, I don't have the exact numbers offhand, but it was something like he was on track for like 1,600 total yards and like 18 touchdowns or something. Like, obviously he wouldn't have kept up at that pace, but I still think that there's a world that this guy could be a top 10 running back in the NFL. I don't think that's out of the question whatsoever.
No.
And you know, someone that's getting overlooked in all of the conversations here is Tyrone Tracy. So he's a great complementary back, right? He's proven he can be 1,000-yard from scrimmage guy in his rookie year. He had another good season when he was kind of relied on last season as well as a complementary back, as a 1-2 punch. That, you know, and then obviously Jackson Dart's running ability as well. Like, actually, we don't need, our running game is perfectly enough of a threat to not need to waste a high value pick on it when we have other positions of need. If you told me we had, you know, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase as our 1 and 2 wide receivers, like you know, I can see why you would add a running back in that offense.
Yeah.
If you said if we had all of our starting guards and on the long term contracts, interior defensive line covered, cornerbacks all locked down, yeah, okay, I can see doing it, but we're not in that situation. So yeah, I think for me, that's. I just felt, well, when he was speaking, Joe Schoen, he talked up the running back room and he went, "Oh damn, we're supposed to be playing we're interested in Jeremiah Love to try and what we don't want to do is see Styles or Downs or whichever defensive player we've got our as our number one guy on the ball. We want Love to go ahead of us. So if the Commanders are in love with Love, we want them to go and pay the money to get up to 4 to jump us to take Love off the board, right? We don't want Tennessee taking Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs or whoever it is that we want.
The one thing I'll say that I forgot to mention too is the other thing I think is big about Cam Scadaboo is you felt the energy when he was on the field with Jackson Dart. You can't quantify the value of that, but you felt the energy get sucked out of this team as soon as he got hurt. Those guys brought a culture to this team, and them onto the field together. I don't think you can quantify how valuable that was to this team.
No. Massive, and the fact they headbutt each other before each game as well. It just gives that like feel good factor, doesn't it? It's like these two young guys that just want to go out and play football hard each and every week, and it's just like this is what we want to see, and this is Giants football, and this is what we want to see every week, right? So yeah, I think people are sleeping on Cam for sure. Because of his injury, but I think he's going to come back strong, man. I think he's going to have a great season, and let's just hope he doesn't have another freak injury because the guy doesn't deserve it at all. He deserves to have a great season this year. Alrighty, I think that's enough about his press conference and about Dex for now. Dane, we sort of track some of the mock drafts that are done each and every season. Dane Brugler released a full 7-round mock draft yesterday, I believe. Aaron, have you got the Giants picks that he made in that?
Yeah. So, round 1, 5th overall, Caleb Downs. So we talked a lot about him being our top safety. Another one of the guys that we've whacked that's maybe this year's Cam Scatterboo is Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech. He got him as what's probably the highest I've seen him go in a mock, but 2nd round overall, 37th overall. Jacob Rodriguez, just a guy, a ball hawking linebacker, absolutely, phenomenal. Similar conversation actually, Monty. I don't know if to Cam Scatterboo, where maybe his athleticism was questioned a little bit. Ran a really good 3-cone that's kind of dispelled some of that, which I think is why he's now into the 2nd round instead of the 3rd. But just a guy that I've loved watching the tape on.
Just good football player, man. And yeah, I mean, similar in the sense that, like, Cam Scatterboo didn't have the good 40 time, but that dude jumped out of the gym. He displayed his explosiveness at the combine. That was meaningful to me.
Yeah. And then 4th. So obviously we don't have a 3rd round pick, as we know that was part of the Jackson Dart deal. And this is where, for me, we just had those 2 picks in the top 100, and we got this huge drop off of player when we get down to the 4th round on day 3. So 1 of 5 wide receiver out of Oklahoma is Dion Burks. 5th round, 145th overall, Shane Be Happy, Penn State guy, Catron Allen. Big running back again. I'm not sure it's a need for us, that the bigger running back, because obviously we saw what Cam Scatterboo could do. But I'm a fan of taking a day 3 running back every year, right? You can rotate those guys off through the roster if you get one that breaks out. They're also a tradable asset. Can they help on special teams? Can they help on thingy? But maybe not the archetype of what I would expect that we would add into our room. And then into our 3 day 6, 3 6th round picks. So cornerback Thaddeus Dixon's out of North Carolina, guard Anez Cooper from Miami, and quarterback Haynes King from Georgia Tech. So I do expect us to add either a 6th round or a UDFA QB, because obviously we've got Jameis Winston this year. But after that, we've got no backup. And again, we've seen teams, make money out of late quarterbacks that have shown something, I'm not saying we'll find a Brock Purdy, but if you can find somebody that's tradable as a starter, you can turn that 6th round pick into a 4th round thing, or it saves you a lot of money on paying 7-8 million for your backup quarterback that you may not need to use, right? So always good to you always got to have a backup, even if we bring a guy UDFA in as a camp arm. I expect there to be another one. Obviously, we signed a guy last week to give us 3 quarterbacks. I'm sure we'll have 4 in camp, so we'll definitely pick up a QB either on day 3 or more likely a UDFA.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if we don't. And like you said, I'm all for drafting a running back every year as well, because they either end up like Eric Gray, or they end up like Brandon Jacobs. You can go one way or the other. And that's where you can get a really like. I mean, obviously we picked up Cam and Tara and Tracy in the later rounds. So, and look where they are now.
And then just to cover some of the other like 1st round picks that we've got out there, not a lot of movement. Obviously, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, I think it was across the board. Francis Marianoa, it was in Todd McShay's latest mock draft on Monday. He has since come out and said, from the information that he's been hearing, it is Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs. That's who it will be. It won't be Francis Marianoa. So that will change in his version 5, which will drop on the eve of the draft. He does it with a bit like Peter Schrager as well. He uses his own knowledge and his own scouting, but also with his connections in the league, and it does what he's hearing and moves things around on the board. So, and the same with Peter Schrager. I didn't include him on here because again, he's already said he's had so much feedback from people in the know that he knows his mock draft has some problems with it. So yeah, next week's the week to watch out for the usually on draft eve for Peter Schrager, and I think I'm pretty sure Todd McShay was the most accurate in terms of the most first round players selected, or at least top 100 guy. I think you got 86 of the top 100 right.
Last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He's Todd McShay's been sneaky, really, really good analyst since he left ESPN.
Yeah.
And just touching on your round 4 pick as well. Aaron, is that my sort of with Dion Burks from Oklahoma, we could potentially be missing neighbors at the start of the season. So adding those kind of receiver depths makes sense at that stage of the draft. I think missing that core person that we might have in neighbors at the start is going to be, we need to make sure that we're adding receiver depth.
Yeah, and who knows what we're going to get from Slayton this year.
Exactly.
Who knows what we're going to get out of Jalen Hyatt this year. If we're going to get anything out of Jalen Hyatt this year. Obviously having the 2 new receivers in as well will be a big help. But yeah, it's I can see us going for a receiver for sure as well. Alrighty then. We're going to sort of round out the show just talking about the off season and off season so far, and a little bit sort of more about the draft as well, as we are getting very close to it. But obviously, we've got the two of you guys as guests on here this evening. So I just want to get your take on a few things. Like, the big news of the off season so far has been obviously the hiring of John Harbaugh as head coach and his staff, and the way he is going to be essentially running this organization from his position he's in. But Monty, what are your thoughts on John Harbaugh? Are you happy with him? Are you excited? Are you nervous?
I mean, I was thrilled with the hire. That's exactly what I wanted us to do. I mean, we got a guy who's done it in this league forever. I think you got a guy who's actually going to have the control to reconfigure this organization. Ravens organization's one of the ones I respect most. I think their front office does great things, and I think Harbaugh is going to bring some of that here and develop that over time. It didn't exactly go exactly how I wanted this offseason. I think some of that was beyond our control. I felt like every step of the way, Harbaugh was missing out his top coaching option. It was like, oh, we're not get Monken. We're not going to get this guy. I just felt like it just kept happening. So that was a little disappointing, but I thought he pivoted pretty well. But we'll see. Like, I think there's upside there with Matt Nagy, but I have some nervousness there. I think, I wish they addressed the interior offensive line, interior defensive line more in free agency. Maybe that's something they do after the draft, and they just kind of played this more for the comp formula. But I love the likely signing. I thought going tight end instead of wide receiver was the better move. I think it's a better value. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that will work in this offense. I think that's something Harbaugh likes to do. And overall, I do think it's been a good offseason, but we'll say a lot. It's going to hinge on this next week here.
Yeah, you mentioned Matt Nagy there as well, and I think there's a lot of skepticism about him when it was announced that he was going to come in as offensive coordinator. But why do you think there was such doubt over him?
I mean, his time in Chicago is the answer. He wasn't there. The reality is there's a lot of for as proven of a guy Matt Nagy should be, for how long he's been an OC, for him having a coach experience. He really is kind of an unknown because you haven't seen him as a play calling OC. You saw him as a head coach, and he's not a good head coach, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's a bad play calling offensive coordinator. You can be one and not the other. But I think there's a lot of questions about his offense in Chicago, and the main reason he succeeded in Chicago was because of Vic Fangio and that defense. So I mean, that's a question, but I think his biggest weakness was his run game in Chicago. I think bringing in Greg Roman to help with that is very big. I thought Brian Callahan as quarterback coach, his offensive coordinator, and a passing game coordinator was a good ad. I think they got good minds in this room, so hopefully they'll figure it out.
Yeah, man. And talking about the defensive side, Denard Wilson. I don't know about you, but I'm excited about Denard Wilson. Like, I just the fact that he wants like no nonsense, like just play hard, get the ball.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about what he brings. I just, I wish there was better results in Tennessee, but it's hard to blame him for that either. That was a pretty god awful team.
Yeah, Tennessee were shocking, but I think he's, for me, like out of the two, like he's the more exciting prospect. He just this aggressive scheme, like disguise heavy, secondary focus. Like it screams to me like we kind of finally know what we're doing on defense after the last 2 years has been pretty poor. Chris, I want to come to you. Like, what are your thoughts on our roster, the situation on our roster right now after free agency and before the draft? Like, do you think we're in a better place than we were last year? Do you think we're worse off than we were last year? Like, what are your thoughts on the signings we made so far?
Well, I think obviously bringing Harbour being the new coach, it's changed the franchise direction, and most of our free agency moves reflect his sort of preference and scheme. I like as Monty touched on, I love the Isaiah Likely signing. I like the Tremaine Edmonds signing. I think that's been great. I think that with Micah McFadden is a long-term answer at linebacker, but it keeps the position solid enough if we do go and draft the likes of like Sonny Styles at 5. Illuminor, happy with that. I think we've re-signed him was something we need to do, and you touched on Darnell Mooney, which I think's a pivotal. Calvin Austin III was added on a 1-year deal. I think again stepping up that slot receiver position, stepping away from the likes of Wandale Robinson, and then one of my favourites, Patrick Ricard or Pancake Pat, who signed a 2-year deal. I thought that was a great little bit of business that we did there.
I don't know what part of my brain it triggers, but the fact that he's 45 and Scatterbo is 44, just having them 45 leading 44 through a hole is just like there's something poetic about it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Greg Newman signed at cornerback to replace Jason Pinnock was brought back safety, and then obviously my go-to sort of thing is the special team. So we brought on punter Jordan Stout, who signed on a record deal, and then former All-Pro kicker Jason Sanders was brought in as well, and a new long snapper added as well. So when you look at it from that sort of perspective, some great additions. Obviously, notable outs. You've got Wandale Robinson, Dane Belton, DJ Davidson, Cordell Flott, Daniel Bellinger, and then a few others. So obviously, we've released some cap space. But I think overall, it's a very clear rebuild from Harbour. Is physical football, familiar faces from Baltimore, I think, protecting Dart and shoring up the special teams. The glaring hole left unaddressed until late is obviously defensive line. And I think now with Lawrence's situation tonight, is obviously a massive, big sort of blow. I wasn't expecting this tonight. That's gone from a concern to in my mind, is a genuine crisis heading into the draft. But I think overall, it's not been bad.
So maybe let's assume that this is all just a storm in a teacup, and Dexter Lawrence is still going to be on the team throughout the draft.
I hope so.
What about your thoughts on the number 5th overall pick, Monty?
My third option would be a trade down. It would be nice to be able to just trade down a little bit and still get our guy. But heck, if you give me enough, I'm willing to go down further. I'm not afraid to trade out of any of these guys as much as I like them. Like, yes, I think Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles are blue chip players, but they're also blue chip non-premium players. And that doesn't mean I wouldn't take them. That doesn't mean that at all. But it doesn't make me afraid to trade out of them either. And I don't know. They bring a lot of value. I think the ideal situation for me would be like I think a team to watch out for is the New Orleans Saints. I think that the Cleveland Browns are the team you have to look at because that's who we're behind. And why would a team want to get in front of the Cleveland Browns? It's probably because they want Carnell Tate, because that's what everybody's saying they're taking. There's a lot of talks of that the New Orleans Saints want a wide receiver for Tyler Shuck. Maybe they get in front of them, and I think you're still looking at, that you get an idea of what they're doing at 5. So basically, you're probably sitting there, Styles, Downs, and then an old lineman, Maligoa, Vega, whoever. And I'd feel pretty good about that. But if we are staying, which I'm perfectly fine with as well, for me, Caleb Downs would be my pick. I think Caleb Downs he's the better of the players. Ruben Bain actually thinks the best player in the draft, but I'm very on him. But I think Caleb Downs is the next guy for me. I think he's a culture changer. I think that's something we desperately need on the defensive side of the ball. I think that he's just a playmaker. He's going to help us in the run game more than anybody else in this draft. I think there's still some projection to him as a coverage guy, but I think he's perfectly capable of being an elite player there. I just haven't seen it enough, really. And then, I'd be great with Sonny Styles. To me, I think that if Sonny Styles wasn't the freak athlete he is, he's probably more of like just a solid first round player. He's a good first round player, but the athleticism obviously brings him up as it should, and the size and all that type of stuff. That does put him right there with me. But I just rather better bet on who's the better player today, and nothing about Caleb Downs' size or athleticism makes me have any concern he can't become an elite player. So I think the floor's there. I think the ceiling's there. That's who I'd bet on, but I'd be perfectly happy with either.
And I think, for me, I've played out the scenario so much, and I said we've only got these 2 picks in the top 100. Anything above sort of the top 75, I think there's real starters in this draft. Maybe not pro bowlers, maybe not all pros, but there's starters all the way down to 75, and obviously with the holes that we have on the roster and the depth that the sort of we're thin in places, having an extra starter out of this draft would be really valuable. So to move down to 8, 9 with the Chiefs, 10 with the Bengals, and pick up a second or a third would be really helpful. And the likelihood is, even at 9, Downs might be available at 9, right? So Styles may go, but if Styles doesn't go, Downs goes. If there's Mensel Delane, the cornerback out of LSU, that is another option. That again, he's kind of in that range. Carnell Tate or the favorite wide receiver at 9, when you're getting that extra pick, is another thing. The guard, obviously, bringing in a guy in a guard or a guy that maybe can take over at tackle at some point in the future. And obviously, we could flip Illuminor. Illuminor's on guard money, effectively, so you could play Illuminor at guard in the future if someone took over it. So there's so many options that I don't think there's necessarily a drop off in the talent. You've got to order them, 1 to 10 in your kind of vertical rankings, but actually they're broadly there are flat here until you get to sort of 12, 13, 14, and I think you start to see a little bit of a drop off. So yeah, I'd prefer to just drop back to 9 maybe, and then pick up either a second or a third, and go with that. And you may even get the same player that you have as your highest, because I think the thing on this draft as well. I think if you spoke to 6 GMs, you'd get 6 different orders on the top 10 players. So you'd have a bunch of players that are not in each other's top 10s, because there's such a broad, flat tier of talent in this draft. And then I guess moving on, and Chris, feel free to jump in on this one. 37. So we've stuck and picked at 5. 37. What you're doing? Let's say we've taken one of the defensive guys, Downs or Styles.
I mean, this is probably one of the most talked about picks after number 5. I'd say the 2 names that would dominate, if the Giants had A&M guard, I think it's Chase. Is it Chase Bizontis? I think.
Yeah, Bizontis. Yeah.
That's that. I've just butchered his name, so I'm assuming he's not going to be in the the chat group listening to this podcast, so I might be able to get away with it. But I think he's in for a pre-draft visit, and then there's extensive interest from another guy, Georgia Tech guard, Kalen Rutledge. So throughout the process, I think he could be probably one of the most potential starting guards starting beyond this season. Both are considered among the best interior linemen in the class. However, with maybe Dexter Lawrence going, there might be a strong argument for going for a defensive tackle instead of a guard. I don't know. Thoughts?
I certainly feel much stronger about using 37 as a need pick rather than a BPA. So and it just so happens that maybe defensive tackle and guard, and even potentially wide receiver, all in the strength of the draft still at 37. So Monty, what do you think? 37. How are you teeing this one up?
Yeah, I mean the good thing is we have a lot of needs, so you could probably do both. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Chris. I think those are some players I'd look at. I think wide receiver, like you mentioned, as a players I'd look at. Denzel Boston and Casey Concepcion are two players I'm very high on, and I would happily take. And then I think the other, I mean, again, I'd look to trade down from this pick, especially if you don't get your guy in first. It's another thought. But I think the one thing that would keep me from trading down is if a guy who I have a first round grade on, which happens at times, is sitting there, and I'm going to keep an eye on guys who I think could fall. One guy who I love, Avion Terrell. I actually gave him he was my he just barely squeaked out as my CB1. I just think he's a good football player. I just love how he plays the game. It's a little bit just liking the style type of thing, but I think he's going to be a phenomenal player. I do think he's going to be able to play outside. I think he can do both. And the fact that he ran that 4.65 at his pro day because he tweaked his hamstring. You know, I'm like cheering for that because I'm like, he's not a 4.65 guy. They've already say he's a 4.45 guy, but that's going to hurt his stock. Awesome. Like I will happy take him. I think CJ Allen's a guy I'm very high on. You know, I think he'd be a fantastic pick there. I have a first round grade on him. I think he could go. And I'll give you one last guy as like my bold prediction shocker guy who I think maybe could fall, and that is Jordan Tyson. I think you listen to how guys like Dane Brugler and Daniel Jeremiah speak about him, and they're speaking with a lot of like hush hush. There is like some worry with this guy, and you see it every year. You saw it with Will Johnson last year. It's always somebody, a lot of injury history there. I could see him being the guy that falls at the first round pick, and I would love that pick at 37.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's where I've played this scenario out a few times. I prefer the trade down at 5 because I feel like I'm getting the same level player. Like you say, at 37, that someone falls out of the first round that you always want. The Denzel Boston was like a guy I was early on in this process was really in love with, and it was like, oh, he's going to be a top 15 guy. He could go to the Cowboys at 12 or something. You know, could go really early. And now I'm seeing him regularly dropping out of the first round in mocks, and some guy that might be there. Conversely, Omar Cooper Jr. is a guy that I'm now seeing going way into the first round, and again above Tyson. Quite often now is Cooper Jr. And I've looked at the odds. I was shocked the other day that I think there's like a 1-20 for Cooper Jr. to go in the first round. I was like, I can't believe he's such a heavy favorite now to go in the first round. Wow. When I had him as a guy that was going to be available at 37. So he's moved right up. And that's why I don't like the trade down at 37. I'd rather get the trade down done at 5, pick up one extra pick, and then, you know, if I could have 37 and 40 and pick up 2 players in this range, like I say, get the guard, Emmanuel Pregnon's another guy in there. Again, really good tape, older prospects, and maybe he's a man playing with boys, and maybe he doesn't get better. But in the second round, I sort of feel like we need a starting guard either this year or next year. You know, with John Runyon on his final year of his deal as well, and we'll move on from him more likely as well. Obviously, right guard is still a problem this year, so having to have a guard in that space, I think Chris, you nailed it there, having a guard. But defensive tackle could become this massive need that we need at that point. That's going to be a real headache. And then I guess the other question I had was, who's your? We always talk on this when we do our top fives. We always have a guy that for some reason maybe not doesn't sit in the top five. Maybe he is a top five at one of our positions. But who's a guy you just like? If he's available, I want to click the button every single time I use the mock draft sim. Who's your guy, Monty?
I mean, the first guy that comes to my mind is a guy I mentioned already, and that's Avion Terrell. I made the bold prediction, and I made him my cornerback one. He's stacked back to back with Jermod McCoy in it for me. But I think he just plays football the right way, man. He plays so downhill, so aggressively. He has great ball skills. I think he's good in man and zone coverage. I'm not overly worried about the size things. A lot of these cornerbacks today are getting skinnier. He's got the NFL bloodlines. I personally think he's a better college player than his brother was, and his brother is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. If he is there at 37, I am picking him every single time.
Chris, have you got my guy, as you've seen us cover over the last couple of weeks? Have you got a guy that you're like, whatever the round is, whenever he's there on the board, I'm taking him?
I think for me, I've already touched upon some of the guards or anything like that. So I think one of those ones I mentioned before would be my top prospects for those. Although I like the. I know that Monty mentioned before one of the other guys. Is it Jay? What was his name? Jordan Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm right in saying he was. Was he originally Colorado and he went to Arizona State? Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. Correct.
Yeah. So I think someone like him would be standout. I think I've had a couple of watches of him. And I think even what was polarizing as well is that Peter Schrager described him as he might be the most polarizing prospect in this draft. And he can go anywhere, but probably in the top 10, or could also go in the top 20s. That's how different he is. So yeah, someone like that.
Yeah, so Tyson's my wide receiver one, right? And but I wouldn't take him at 5 because of the injury history. I just wouldn't want to take the risk. It costs you your job as a GM. Again, maybe our GM's already out the door anyway, so he feels like he can do it. But yeah, that's a sort of risky player. Dan, when you can jump in there.
No. I think with number 5 pick, like it's almost like you think if we trade out of 5, is that us admitting like that we have more big holes that we need to fix with draft that we can with drafting one elite player?
I think possibly, but at the same time, with this draft, it's such a broad tier, and maybe he gave it away. Trader Joe. It's one of the things that he's kind of done well around the draft board is move up and move down at good values. Maybe that's because he's got such a good team. Looking at the trade value chart, convincing him, and maybe he said, "Oh, I don't even do that bit myself. I just I get the team to do that bit, right?" So, but I think last year it was clear at 3. There was a guy that was worth taking, even at a position where we had some strength, and we have holes on the roster last year. We were desperate for a quarterback. We didn't pull the trigger at quarterback at 3, albeit I've seen a lot of redrafts now that people saying that Jackson Dart would absolutely be worth the number 3 pick overall in the draft if you'd but now that you've seen his rookie season. But yeah, so I don't think we're admitting that we have to trade. Obviously, if Dexter Lawrence goes and we need to get back in the range of where the D tackles are valued, then you're kind of admitting, yes, we need those picks, right?
Yeah.
I think it depends how far you drop back. If you're dropping back clearly out of these top tier players just to get a ton of picks, then I do think you're saying that. But there's a world like just playing the board. You trade back to 8 or 9, and you can still get your player. I'll say to the point you made there, Aaron, about like the strength of Joe Schoen has been the trade. I'll say we mentioned like maybe this is a situation where Joe Schoen's fired after the draft. If I was thinking of any way Joe Schoen could prove himself to Harbaugh in my mind, that would be, making calls around the league, getting trades in place, reading the board like he did with like a Jackson Dart last year and saying, hey, I'm going to set up these trades. I'm going to move back. I'm going to get your guy anyway and pull it off. If any way I think he was going to save his job for Harbaugh, I think that would be the way to do it.
Yeah. And I'll just give you my guy. I don't know if you've covered. If you've not done your top 100 yet, Monty, he won't be in your top 100. Any chance I get to bring this guy up, I'm bringing him up. So it's Eli Heidenreich at Navy.
I knew he was coming. I knew he was coming.
I like Eli.
He is the white Percy Harvin. He is Christian McCaffrey athletically. He is exactly the same as Christian McCaffrey. Obviously came out of the triple option offense, so the weird thing, but Navy's all-time leading receiver. I actually would play him out of the slot and have him do more of the Percy Harvin role as the slot guy rather than just as a pure running back. But imagine mixing him into that backfield, into this kind of offense. Every single mock draft I do, you will see Eli Heidenreich in the 6th round as one of those 3 6th-round picks. He is coming to the Giants. And in Dane Brugler's 7th-round mock draft, he went 195, so after the Giants pick. So he was available. I would have taken him. Doesn't leave any mock draft that I have without him.
It's the exciting whites in their backfield. I'll give you one other guy who's more of a later guy that I was my guy, and that's Logan Jones from Iowa. He's my center one. He's been my center one ever since we reviewed the interior offensive line. I think he just has insane athleticism out of his stance. I think he has like these vice grip hands. I think he's getting knocked a little bit for his size and strength, but it's the same thing like his former Iowa Tyler Linderbaum got knocked for because he couldn't one-on-one a bull rush from a 350-pound nose tackle. It's like, I tell you, there's a lot of centers who can't do that. That is not an abnormal thing. And we've talked about some analytics and stuff on our show, and if you look at some of the best translating stats for these guys, offensive line is some of the more predictive ones. And you look at 40-yard dash and you look at 20-yard shuttle, and you want to look at guys who ran a 4.9 or less at that 40-yard dash, and you want to look at a guy who ran a 4.75 or less in the 20-yard shuttle. He ran a 4.9 in his 40-yard dash and a 4.59 in his 20-yard shuttle. A freak athlete. I think you're looking at he's going to be the best center in this draft.
And he Iowa is a factory for offensive linemen, right? Obviously his teammate has sort of been is the cover star with the ginger mullet and coming out of there, but there is just a history of Iowa offensive linemen and doing well in the NFL, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And let's face it as well. There's been doubts over JMS since he's been drafted as well. So that could be a potential replacement for him.
Yeah, also a fun fact here. There was the Tyler Linderbaum cop, who again, great athlete, up like the same size. Also, both guys who came into Iowa as defensive tackles who switched over to center once they were there.
There you go. Bloodline.
There we go. So last then, I think last question I've got about the draft is, what's the bigger need right now? What's a bigger priority right now? Fixing the defense or protecting the quarterback? Like, each of you, what is the bigger need right now? To fix the defense or protecting the quarterback? Aaron?
Yeah, so if GVR was on the roster, I would be saying fix the defense because we proved that we could be a high scoring team without some of our best stars, this kind of thing. But without that, with that guard as a whole, I don't know if I cannot address guard in the first 2 picks.
Cool. Chris?
What Aaron said, basically, I would want to fix the guard position. It's going to have to be offense. We need to protect Jackson Dart as much as possible, I feel, in my mind, rather than heading towards the defense. Although with the bombshell that we've seen tonight who knows? But that's what I'm going with.
Yeah. So as we are right now, is protect Jackson Dart. Monty?
Yep. And I don't disagree with you guys. And I guess to Chris' point, I think I would go even more of the offense. If we get rid of Dexter Lawrence, we're gonna have to start scoring more points. So yeah, for me, obviously I'm a big BPA guy. I'm gonna take BPA when it makes sense, but my tiebreaker basically every time I pick is how do I help our young quarterback? If I can't decide between two guys, I pick the one who's gonna help Jackson Dart.
It's a great way to look at it, man. And we're all super excited about Jackson Dart's second year, and we want to give him the best opportunity possible to succeed, right? And it'd be criminal to not give him everything that he needs. So yeah, I think for sure. Like, don't get me wrong, there's holes on the defense, but I think what we have is a good starting point. And there's potentially some players that could still make a difference. But yeah, that guard position is definitely one of concern. I think that's definitely something we need to address for sure. For sure. Alrighty. I think that is all we have time for this evening. We'll be back on Tuesday when we'll only be 2 days away from the draft, as we round out the top fives at each position, looking at the quarterbacks and tight ends. Plus, we'll be completing our own full 7-round Giants mock draft and looking at some of the top day 2 and day 3 picks as well. So we've got loads to look forward to on Tuesday when we're 2 days out from the draft. But anything to add before we go, guys?
So only thing that I come across while we were live, the giant that is going to be announcing one of our picks is OC Umenyiora. So obviously, British fans know. Obviously, he's a staple on TV. Obviously, went into a medical coma towards the back end of this season. It's almost unrecognizable coming out of the back of that. But yeah, great to see that he's
I love that.
in good health and going to be on the stage. Obviously, Super Bowl winner, British connection. So yeah, nothing better than seeing OC Umenyiora announcing the pick.
Bloody love that. Chris?
Yep. Just a strong draft, a good Lawrence return, Dart taking a genuine next step forward in 2026, and we don't want another 4 and 5 win season. And I know someone posted up before about saving Joe Schoen's job. That might just about save Joe Schoen's job if we get that sorted. So that's looking forward to next week. Pittsburgh, Yinzers, lots of boozing. It's going to be a good one.
For sure, man. Money?
Here's hoping we get Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles and they're playing behind Dexter Lawrence.
We all hope and pray that happens. Obviously, the whole Dex situation is going to be no doubt be evolving over the next week before the draft kicks off. Just sign the man, pay him the money, and get the job done, so then we can all move on and rest peacefully at night. Because what we don't want is to be all up in the air and hanging over us as we move towards the draft. Appreciate you boys coming on this evening, Chris and Monty. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. You obviously love to have you back on anytime. So we'll no doubt sort that out for later in the year. It'd be good to have you back on after the draft and hear your thoughts on camp and what the season looks like as we get closer to it. So yeah, really appreciate you boys coming on.
Pleasure as always, guys.
Thanks for having us.
No worries. And thanks to all the viewers for getting involved in the comments. Again, we appreciate you all and appreciate all the love you guys give us. And my thanks as ever go to Aaron for joining me and to you boys as well. We are signing off. Until next time, let's go Giants.